property creates incentives to take care of your land, to conserve your land, to reuse it responsibly. Do you understand that? If everyone in America owned land together, everybody would act as if no one owned it. Take a look at Baltimore. They didn't even own that land. They burnt it to the ground. The thugs that Obama couldn't get enough of. And when no one owns it, no one will take care of it. Look at the public housing in America. Look at public housing and how the people abuse it, how they treat it like what's the word I'm looking for, like a cesspool. Why do people in public housing treat their own housing like garbage? Because they don't own it. Why don't they own it? Because they don't have the money to own it. Why don't they have the money to own it? Well, either through bad luck or through laziness. They have no capacity to own anything. So we, the people, say, all right, look, they can't live in the street. Let's give them some public housing. Well, the least you would figure is they would take care of their housing, but they don't. Take a look at the sad state of public housing projects across America, and you will see exactly how socialism works. That's it. I'll be right back.
Join the Savage Nation. Call now, 855-400-SAVAGE, 855-400-7282. Savage.
Your Savage Nation is sponsored by SwissAmerica.com. It's the only company I trust for tangible assets, gold and silver. Shortly after the break, we're going to shift topics to Bill Gates' biggest fear, which is that a pandemic will sweep the planet and wipe out 50% of humanity. I agree with him. We'll talk about that then. But I want to conclude this discussion of socialism with one remark. I read this in the Foundation for Economic Education. As Peruvian economist Hernando de Soto remarked, you can travel in rural communities around the world and you will hear dogs barking because even dogs understand property rights. It is only statist governments that have failed to understand property rights. You understand the difference? Owning something is akin to reality anywhere on earth. Everybody wants to own something. And what's happening in America is that we've imported so many have-nots and have raised an entire generation of bums and welfare leeches that they have now become the norm. They think it wasn't bad enough that we had to feed them and clothe them and house them and give them medication for their whole lives. Now you've got demagogues like Obama for 7 straight years telling them that they're not really losers. They're on the bottom because of fill in the blank, racism, you fill in the blank. And as a result, now you've got a lower class, a poor class, however you want to put it. I really don't care how you mince words any way you want, that he's stirring up against the middle class. Because make no mistake about it, his golf partners are not going to be affected by the rabble. Obama's fundraising sources are never going to be affected by the rabble. It's you and I, the middle class, that are being affected by the rabble as they are being stirred up by Obama and the leftist minions. Now new ones have come along like Bernie Sanders and Martin O'Malley. Now Hillary is being pushed to the left as a result of these characters. As you well know, she's being drawn farther and farther to the left, which is a very good thing for the rest of us, because America is fundamentally not a left-wing or a left-leaning nation at all. Every election of the recent past has shown us that America is a center-right nation. That's what America actually is. But the devils, the evil ones, they have a different game plan. Their game plan is to stir up the hatred on the bottom to get the bottom feeders to vote. That's number one. Number two is to bring in as many illegal aliens as they can to get them to vote. Number three is to control the voting counting. Who actually counts the votes? As I pointed out a few books ago, I was shocked to learn that the votes are no longer counted in America. They're counted electronically by a company, I believe it was in Germany, I don't even know, England somewhere. It's hard to believe what's happened to this country. So the whole thing may be a sham. There may not even be a real election. It could be just a, like a shadow game, like puppets on a stage. There may not even really be an election. I think Hillary's been chosen already. It doesn't matter if she raises $2 billion or $2.5 billion. It doesn't matter if they find out that she stole $10 billion. It wouldn't matter. I think they've already picked her. And so we're living no longer in this free republic. You know that. And many of you have given up, and you don't even care anymore. That's the truth. The apathy has set in, which is exactly how these demagogues win. Once apathy sets in amongst the vigilant, take a guess who takes over society. right? 855-400-7282. Danny on WBAP in Dallas. Fire away. Go ahead, please.
Hi, Michael. I just wanted to let you know that I was shopping in a Walmart in Saginaw, Texas today, and your book was there right on top at eye level, 2 copies along with all the other bestsellers. Everybody else had 2 copies as well, so I just thought I'd shed some good news on you today.
Well, what you're saying is the book is selling. I know it is. It's actually selling very, very well. It had 2 very good weeks. Countdown to Mecca is a bestseller. And yet, of course, the evildoers at the New York Times have made believe it doesn't exist. It outsold 4 books that they put on their bestseller list. Go figure that one out. If you can't count on the New York Times to even produce an honest bestseller list, can you count on any of their political opinions?
No.
No, well, no, you can't. It just shows you how tricky the whole world has become. And I promoted the book fairly good. I'm not pushing it very hard. Here's what I feel. I feel the book is so good that as people read Countdown to Mecca, they're going to talk about it with their friends and their friends and their friends' friends, and they're going to buy them for Father's Day for a gift for the brother, the father, the husband, because I think it's a great read and also has a great political message. It's a political thriller novel. But you stay on the line, Danny. I'll be sending you one in either case. Let's go back. There's one caller I want to get to who says socialism does work. John on WABC, go ahead, please.
Yeah, no, I don't say it works, but I say there's always the argument on the other side. They mentioned Switzerland as being a place where it works.
Right, and how many immigrants does Switzerland have?
Probably none.
How many different ethnic groups does Switzerland have? Switzerland is a homogeneous nation where everyone knows everybody. They're sort of related.
Right.
And so they all have a sense of pride in their nation. And they, let's say, don't have the same problems that we have here as a result of our diversity and a result of our great diversity. I mean, diversity has been a great, great addition to America, isn't it? Bringing in so many people from Africa, for example, or bringing in as many people as you can who are Muslim, who will never assimilate to this country. Never. Can you name one country where Muslims have been brought in en masse, where they've assimilated to the host nation? Name one nation where when Muslims were brought in as immigrants, they assimilated to the values of the nation. Can you name one nation? When I come back, Bill Gates on a coming epidemic as his greatest fear.
Join the Savage Nation. Call now, 855-400-SAVAGE, 855-400-7282. Savage.
Well, we've been talking about why socialism is going through a sort of revival in America right now, and how, although it's been rejected around the world in most Western nations, here in America it seems to be enjoying some kind of renaissance as a result of the double talkers and the phonies who are promising so much to people, of course, that they can never deliver on. It's worked before for demagogues. I doubt very much it's going to work for them, but nevertheless, we're going to have to listen to this hot air for a while. I want to move to the topic of epidemics right now in health. And that is because last week I stumbled upon a piece of an interview with Bill Gates, who has to be one of the most intelligent men on the planet. And his greatest fear, he says, he looked at the spike of deaths in the last century. And you know there was a huge spike of millions of deaths in World War I for obvious reasons. Men were killing each other. But what you don't know is that there was a bigger spike after World War I of deaths in the 1920s or the late 19s from the Spanish flu. It wiped out millions of people in the world, the Spanish flu did. And he then goes on to this century, and he looks ahead, and he's a visionary, obviously, Bill Gates, and he says his greatest fear, however remote it is that a pandemic will occur which mankind cannot control, which will wipe out 50% of humanity. So I've been thinking about that, especially since I like to believe that I take care of myself. I like to believe that I know an awful lot about epidemiology. I avoid the obvious, locuses of infection, loci of infection, I want to put it that way. And I know well enough to stay away from people who are sick. That's common sense. I wash my hands. I'm an inveterate hand washer. Whenever I come in from being outside, I take my shoes off and wash my hands. I'm fanatical about it. I always have been. And I've been fairly lucky and have enjoyed pretty good health. Well, last week I got hit with a flu and I was sicker than I've been since I'm a child. It was something I've never encountered as an adult. I was doubled over in pain from a sore throat, which secondary infection. I got a strep throat. No matter what amount of vitamins I used, I could not get on top of this flu, at least for a few days. It was raging in me, and I was frightened from it. Well, eventually, I had to use antibiotics to stop the strep throat infection, and I continued mega doses of vitamin A, vitamin C, herbs. You can't believe the homeopathic treatments I found that actually worked to suppress the cough. The cough was so bad, I thought I would break a rib. I spoke with another friend last night, by the way, a big burly man who also got hit. He said, when he had it, he said the coughs was so bad he thought his ribs would break. That's how bad it was. So you can still hear it in me. I don't have 100% back. I'm back to about 70% now, 75. I can feel it in my delivery. My mind is sharp, but my delivery's not there. I don't have the wind power yet. Now, a normal person wouldn't have gone back to work for 3 weeks. A person on tenure who is retired at my age wouldn't work at all. He probably spent 3 to 4 months recovering from the flu I just got through, and I was back on the air in 2 days. So the point is that the best laid plans of mice and men and all that, we can assume that we know what to do to prevent illness and death, but we all know what's waiting for us. And eventually it catches up to all of us. No matter how strong we are or smart we are, it catches up to us. So let's listen in right now to Bill Gates's very rational fears about the possible coming epidemic.
Why don't you describe for me, as vividly as you can, what it is you're worried about, what it is that the nightmare scenario looks like?
Fortunately, there's very few things, and most of them are very low probability. Some big volcanic explosion, gigantic earthquake, asteroid. But at least in the nuclear case, you've got to say we take it quite seriously. We budget a lot of money, have a lot of people who think about nuclear deterrence, and I'm very glad that work's being done, and I rate the chance of a nuclear war in my lifetime as being fairly low. I rate the chance of a widespread epidemic far worse than Ebola in my lifetime is well over 50%. If we look at the 20th century and we look at the death chart of the 20th century, I think everybody would say, oh yeah, there must be a spike for World War I. Sure enough, there it is, like 25 million. And there must be a big spike for World War II, and there it is, it's like 65 million. But then you'll see this other spike that is as large as World War II right after World War I. And most people, a lot of people would say, well, what? What was that? There's two kinds of flus. There's flus that spread between humans very effectively, and there's flus that kill lots of people. And those two properties have only been combined into a widespread flu once in history. Well, that is Spanish flu. We have no idea where it came from. It's called the Spanish flu because the Spanish press was the freest. They were the first to talk openly about it. And so in the annals of epidemic history, that's the big event. I funded a disease modeling group that uses computer simulation, and that work has been phenomenal in helping us target our polio eradication resources and which parts of Nigeria should we work harder on. And it's very natural if you have a group like that to say, hey, look at something like the Spanish flu in the modern day. Health systems are far better. And so you think, hey, that wouldn't be very bad. Well, we tried it, and there are some assumptions we had to make. But what we showed is that the force of infection because of modern transport, which compared to 1918 is over 50 times as great. And so if you get something like the flu, and you look at that map of how within days it's basically in all urban centers of the entire globe, that is very eye-opening. That didn't happen with Spanish flu in the past. The opportunity to do more than just let it run its course is really only in the last decade. Basically, when you talk about drugs, you can talk about small molecules or talk about these complex biological protein-like things, of which there's a subclass called antibodies. Antibodies are the molecules that the immune system naturally builds to attack disease. Today, the idea that somebody says, oh, here's an antibody, make a lot of it, make it very quickly, that's right